So, guys, four things happened today. One, Trump's own counterterrorism chief resigned and said this war has nothing to do with America. Two, Trump responded by calling for journalists to be executed. Three, the CIA is reportedly preparing to charge Tucker Carlson for talking to Iranians. Four, Ali Larijani, Iran's most powerful man after Khamenei, was confirmed dead by an Israeli airstrikes. Four things, all symptoms of the same disease, a war that was sold as a necessity, unraveling as a catastrophe. And an administration that has run out of arguments, so instead it's running out of people. Let's start with the most important story for the day. Joe Kent, director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He resigned this morning, and before we proceed, hold on just before we proceed. Because I need you to understand who this man is. 11 combat deployments in the Middle East, Army Ranger, Special Forces, CIA officer, his wife Shannon, a Navy cryptologist, was killed in a suicide bombing in Syria in 2019. This man has paid the most personal price imaginable in the wars this country keeps starting. Now, before we proceed as well, he's not a Democrat, he's not a protester, not a leaker. He's one of Trump's own personally nominated team, chosen crew. Trump personally praised him. The Senate confirmed him 52 to 44 along party lines as Trump loyalist. And this morning he wrote Trump a letter of resignation that said the following, and these are his actual words, and I quote, "Iran poses no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby." Now, let me explain why those two words, imminent threat, matter legally. Under US law, a president can only launch military strikes without congressional approval if there is an imminent threat confirmed. The director of the National Counterterrorism Center, the man whose literal job is to assess whether threats are imminent or not, just said publicly there was no imminent threat. That means this war may not just be a strategic disaster, it might be an illegal one too. And Trump's response, he told reporters, "I always thought he was weak on security. Very weak. The man with 11 combat deployments and a dead wife is weak on security." Okay. One senior White House official said Ken didn't have the power or influence despite being the director of the NCTC, which raises an obvious question. Why did you give him the job if he's unqualified? And here is the detail nobody is reporting loudly enough on social media, nor the general broadcast media. The resignation leaves America without a director of the National Counterterrorism Center during an active war. That's not a staffing issue, that's a structural collapse waiting to happen in real time at any moment. And please do note, it is not a person from Iran or Middle East or Russia or China that's claiming this. It is a man from inside his administration that confessed to that fact, a man that's literally on Trump's own crew. His guy might have just brought down the entire administration. Now we will proceed to another whistleblower. Trump accused CNN and New York Times and the Wall Street Journal of treason. And in American law, treason carries the death penalty just like most nations on earth. And the journalists in question, the ones who reported Iran hit US aircrafts in Saudi Arabia, or the aircraft carriers are damaged or presumably damaged, or the ones that published the real casualty numbers, or tried to convey the real message from the war zone up to the people worldwide. Now, what was actually being done in that situation as of this moment? America built its entire global identity on one idea: freedom. Not freedom for people who agree with the government, freedom for everyone. The First Amendment, freedom of the press, the thing that America spent 250 years telling the rest of the world, which made it different from every authoritarian regime on earth. Thomas Jefferson, who owned slaves, so obviously not a perfect man, but even he said, "Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate to prefer the latter." That was the founding principle. And right now, in 2026, The President of the United States is calling for journalists to be executed for accurately reporting a war he started and cannot win. The FCC Chairman Brendan Carr is now reviewing broadcast licenses of networks covering the war. Let me say that plainly. The government is threatening to revoke the license of news channels for reporting news the government doesn't like. That's not protecting. That's not protecting national security. That's the definition of state media. Every authoritarian government in history, now or before, eventually gets to this point. The moment when the story cannot be controlled anymore. So they go after the people telling it. America just got here. I wonder if it will turn out like the Middle East soon, sooner or later. Now moving to another controversial point, Tucker Carlson. Now this is genuinely complicated, so let me give you the full picture. Tucker Carlson, once Trump's most prominent media ally, has become one of the loudest voices against this war and against Israeli influence in the American policy. He met with Trump 3 times at the White House in January and February, lobbying against the attack, and Trump didn't listen. The war started, Tucker went public with his opposition, and now the CIA allegedly read his texts and found he was in contact with Iranian sources before the war began. The potential charge he's facing would be the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which is a 1938 law that requires people acting on behalf of foreign governments to register with the DOJ. And Tucker Carlson said, and I quote directly, "It's my job to talk to everybody all the time and try to figure out what's happening around the world. That's literally what I do for a living, and I'm not going to stop doing that." Unquote. Now, here is what I want to say about this fact. I'm not defending Tucker Carlson's politics. I don't agree with everything the man says. But there is a principle here that matters regardless of who it's happening to. Journalists talk to everyone. That's the job. So guys, journalists at a certain level in the profession, they become the source. They don't wait for Axios or CNN or Reuters to verify their sources. They become the source. CNN talks to world leaders in their show, 60 Minutes, Sky News, and many others. They interview world leaders every day. Does that mean they are spies? Glenn Greenwald, who broke the NSA surveillance story, and is the journalist Tucker Carlson told this to, put it in better words that I can. He said, "The CIA surveilling an American journalist and referring him for criminal prosecution for having sources in a country that America then went to war with is the kind of thing we have spent decades criticizing other countries." And here is the twist that nobody's talking about. Some analysts are now suggesting Trump may have actually used Tucker as an unwitting back channel to Iran, allowing Tucker to talk to Iranians, feeding them the impression that the war wasn't coming, part of his strategic diversion, while he was planning the strikes all along. At the same time, the negotiations he was taking as an excuse for that was going very well, in which he didn't need the strikes to begin with. Which would mean Tucker wasn't spying for Iran. Tucker was being used by his own government without knowing it. If that's true, prosecuting him afterward would be genuinely extraordinary. You use a man as a tool, then charge him for being the tool you used. Regardless of which version is true, the broader pattern is clear. As Greenwald wrote, the real goal is not necessarily a criminal conviction, it is to create a climate of fear and intimidation for anyone criticizing both Israel and this war, and especially for those reporting that the government claims doesn't match reality. That's not justice, that's a warning shot aimed at everyone watching. And using backdoor channels through journalists is not something new, by the way. It is widely used, and what we know on the news is a fraction of the truth of what's actually happening behind the scene. So yes, back channels do exist, especially when you do not want public attention. As example, the Cuban Missile Crisis with JFK was solved through back channels with journalists taking and delivering messages between JFK and his Soviet counterpart. Now, let's move to the next and most dangerous headline we have today, which is Larijani's assassination. Iran confirmed it. Ali Larijani is dead, and with him was Ghulam Rida Soleimani, commander of the Basij. Let me tell you why Larijani specifically matters. He was one of the few figures in Tehran who could manage both the war and politics around at the same time, simultaneously. A hardliner who understood negotiations, a system loyalist who understood limits. He was seen leading international Quds Day marches on camera just last Friday. He was dead by Tuesday. The two were killed in a makeshift tent, moved away from headquarters deliberately to make tracking harder. Israel found them anyway. That is not a satellite imagery, that is a human source on the ground inside Tehran's innermost circle. Same signature as the pager explosions, same signature as the secret facilities bombed in the 12th Day War. Iran has a mole, senior level, real-time access. And now, here is the analysis some people are raising behind the scene, behind Larijani's assassination, which was in purely military in its core motive. It was Israel removing the one person who might eventually have been willing to explore a back-channel peace process. When the US is willing to negotiate a process Larijani was reportedly resistant to pursuing. In other words, Israel may have killed the exit before anyone could find the door. And Trump himself, while this was happening, said publicly, "We have people wanting to negotiate. We have no idea who they are." The President of the United States admitted on record that his war partner has killed so many Iranian leaders that America no longer knows who to call and who to exchange talks about peace with. That's not a strategy. That's a man in a car doing about 120 miles an hour just to realize the brakes are gone and the GPS has no signal. So this war, while it's serving no purpose and Trump wants a way out, Israel is cutting all exits and further escalating the situation. And whether if it was effective or not, the assassination, I will tell you in the end what to expect after Larijani's assassination in Iran, whether it will affect the system or not. Watch till the end. If you're watching on TikTok, I will upload that on a separate video. So Trump faced another major issue today, which is the alliances that he was expecting. Trump went to the Financial Times and threatened his Western allies, send warships to Hormuz or face consequences. He said there is a coalition of 7 nations ready to join. Here are the responses of these nations, he allegedly claimed. Germany, not our war. Britain, we will not send our children to die in a fight that's not ours. France, Japan, and South Korea said no. China refused to comment because China is buying Iranian oil through Hormuz at a discount and has a zero interest in opening it for anyone else. The coalition of 7, nobody has seen it. Nobody can name it. Nobody joined it. The man who spent his career ruling the world by threats of tweets, watching every ally he thought he owned say no to his face in public, on the record, while a war he cannot end continues. So, where is this exactly going? Because there are 2 scenarios being discussed that should alarm every person watching. Scenario 1 is the nuclear trap. Some are quietly discussing whether Israel would use nuclear weapons against Iranian nuclear facilities, and it might turn out to be true. I want to be precise about this. If Israel uses nuclear weapons, it will not end the war. It will detonate a whole different war entirely. I know you heard this scenario many times, but I will try to be as brief as possible. See, every nuclear-armed state on Earth, Russia, China, and Pakistan, and others, will be forced to respond to a nuclear strike anywhere if the taboo breaks. It breaks for everyone. If it breaks once, it breaks for everyone. The entire architecture of nuclear deterrence that has kept the world from a third world war since 1945 is built on one principle. Nobody uses them. The moment that principle breaks, the calculation for every government on earth that has these weapons changes overnight. Trump is already in a catastrophe. He desperately needs an exit, and nuclear escalation doesn't give him an exit. It pulls every superpower on earth into a conflict with no rules and no off-ramp. And America and Israel already are the two most disliked nations on earth by global polling. I would like to use another term, but I don't want this video taken down. So they would cross a line that no amount of diplomacy ever brings them back from. So the second scenario is the false flag scenario. I explained that before, but it should concern you the most because Israel and the United States need justification for boots on the ground. They don't care who goes, they just need anyone who can fight. Israel needs a human shield. And the American public doesn't want this war. NATO refused to join. Gulf states, they refuse to join as well. And they are aware that they are tools being used. But the point is, how long can you pressure them till they reach their breaking point? Even Trump's own base is fracturing about that. So how do you manufacture the support that doesn't exist? History has documented the answer. Gulf of Tonkin, fabricated, the main disputed terrorist attacks in the Middle East or an American soil, which could be designated or attributed to Iran, designed to create the emotional momentum that a political argument cannot. I'm not saying this is happening, I'm saying there are known methods. The conditions for their use are currently perfect, and Israel has demonstrated throughout history a willingness to create the justification it needs, regardless of the loss of life associated with that. Israel doesn't want America as a partner in this war. Israel wants America as a shield. A human shield made of soldiers and aircraft carriers and Tomahawk missiles paid for by American taxpayers, which will be aimed at Israel's regional competitors, and if that shield needs a push, they have historically been willing to provide the push. Why Iran cannot be defeated this way is the question I told you to wait till the end of the episode to answer. Here is what Israel and America fundamentally do not understand about this conflict. They don't understand what a creed is. Not a religion, not a nationality, a creed. A soldier who fights not because he was ordered to, but because he believes to his core that he's defending his home, his family, his identity, his survival. When an army fights from that place, removing the leadership doesn't stop the war, because the leadership was never the reason they were fighting. Iran has 3 distinct military forces, by the way, which would prove boots on the ground as a total catastrophe for anyone willing to join this conflict by land. The regular army and the IRGC combined give you about 1.5 million soldiers. The Basij, who just had their leader killed, which are the People's Militia, they are 10 million soldiers trained and ready to fight. Not professional, but all trained, all motivated, and they are willing to operate within a system specifically designed to function even when the top of the pyramid is gone. Khamenei was killed, Iran didn't stop. And what made them stronger is the idiocy of killing civilians. Instead of toppling the government, you brought them all together. Larijani is dead, Iran won't stop, because the system was built for exactly this scenario. Now, contrast that with Israel or America. Remove the political leadership, the coalition fragments. The justification evaporates. The public support collapses. The phones start ringing, asking, "What are we doing here? Who's the leader now?" The strongest army in the world is the one where every soldier knows exactly why they are fighting and doesn't need to be reminded or paid to do the job. Any army fighting to defend the land, fighting because survival itself is at stake, fighting because losing is not an abstract policy. The outcome, it's the end of everything they have. That army becomes functionally invincible against an army fighting for a decision made in a room they have never seen by people who will never come near the battlefield or witness the horrors of warfare. And the Arab world, which was paralyzed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Lavrov, which he said something last week that should be on every front page. Arab leaders fear America more than they fear God. He said that because the Gulf states, with American military bases on their soil, with their airports and ports and oil facilities getting hit, are still not moving against those bases. That's not loyalty, that's paralysis born of decades of economic dependency and political subordination. And it will not last forever. But for now, the people paying the highest price in this war are also the people with the least say in it. And guys, Oman confirmed that they will not join the war. The Arabs made it clear. They don't want to join the war, but there is a breaking point. And one way the Arabs could start to pressure America into this point to end the war, they can either threaten to end diplomatic ties with America or at least kick the bases out or by force subdue and eliminate their use into these battles. At least they would ensure that their sovereignty is intact. Iran wouldn't have to launch missiles at their own targets. Now, I'm not here defending Iran, I'm not defending anybody. I need to clear the fact that Arabs are being pushed into an escalation they are never part of, because at the end, they are the target of that whole mayhem. And comes another controversial part, which is Netanyahu's death. Now, I have seen the entire AI videos and fakes being posted on Twitter and TikTok. And in fact, I don't care that much about the news, because if Netanyahu dies, yeah, I would be personally somewhat satisfied. We all want justice for those 80,000 killed in Gaza and all the other atrocities we don't know anything about. But the fact is, whether Netanyahu dies, Yoav Gallant dies, any one of these bastards die, there is no changing the fact that the core reason still there. There is something more important than Netanyahu being eliminated. He's not the problem. The problem is the concept of Israel itself. A state built on another people's land through expulsion, violence, systematic erasure, justified by a theology and a mythology that the rest of the world is expected to respect, while the people displaced by it are expected to simply disappear. Kill Netanyahu, put someone else in his place. The occupation will remain, the siege will remain, the settlements will still remain. Resistance will also remain. You cannot solve a wound by changing the person who refuses to treat it. As long as the state built on that idea exists in its current form, this region will not know peace. Hell, not the entire world will know peace. Not because of any individual, but because of the foundational premise. Now, if we go, how will this war end? This war will stop. Not because someone won, it's because no one can continue. America has burned through years of Tomahawk stockpiles in weeks, and you cannot just make up for the fact that you are not ready to face drone warfares in a matter of days. It needs months, maybe years of preparations. And the Financial Times confirmed it. The Navy will feel the damage left by the Tomahawk's disappearance for a while, the air defense stockpiles as well. European allies refuse to participate. The logistics supply lines are strained enough. And the Gulf states will not participate in this war, and they are paying the price of a war they never wanted. American soldiers are dying in the conflict. So, whose stated objective have all failed? Trump failed at everything. There is no regime change, no nuclear program destroyed, no missiles program stopped, Hormuz is not opened, and by the way, it's not open for American and Israeli ships. And Trump entered this war to prove he was the most powerful man on earth. He is coming out proving something different entirely, that military power and the fighting creed are not the same thing. Military power destroys, a creed rebuilds and maintains. Iran spent 50 years preparing to be attacked. He spent 50 years not believing they were ready. Today, I'm sure he believes it.